Welcome everyone to week 3 of April's Advisor Ambassador Program. My name is Zach Hewells and I work in the Marketing and Communications Department at NAFA. I'm very pleased to have Robert Clark with us today from California. If you've never been on a Zoom call before with us, this is Zoom. It's a lot of fun. We use it all the time. If you scroll over the window, you'll see there's a chat feature, and I'll go ahead and send everyone a message right now just so you can locate it. If you have any questions for Robert or myself during the presentation, feel free to use the chat feature and we'll try and get to the end of it at the end of the program. And this is a recorded session, so if you do want the recording at a later date, feel free to reach out to me at recruitment@nafa.org and I'd be happy to pass it along. But let's get into the program. So Robert has spoken with our Advisor Ambassador program before. He's a seasoned ambassador in that regard. He was very active in NAFA, California, and has a lot of wisdom on the social media and digital front. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Robert for today. And thanks for joining us, man. How are you doing?
Awesome. I appreciate that, Zach. Yeah, doing great.
Good.
And I was really, I can't remember the last one I did. I think it was like optimize time and cash flow. And let me tell you, maximizing your brand and your growth is probably way more up my alley than the first one. And that's why I was really excited to kind of create some content around this to share with everyone here. By no means am I the branding expert, but I have followed a lot of the guidelines that I'm going to share with you today. And that's why I think it's relevant, right? We're all kind of learning as a community here. So the first piece that I really try and focus on any topic is I really go into defining what is a personal brand or just a brand. And the definition that I love and what I think is most relevant for us today is, a brand is a particular identity or image that's regarded as an asset. And so when we think about that, how is our brand going to be an asset to us today, tomorrow, a year from now, and 30 and 50 years from now? When we look at a lot of the leaders in our world today, they've gone out of their way to create a brand. And we know this by thinking of someone's name and thinking, oh yeah, they do this, this, and that. That is their brand. That is their asset. So by the end of this short session, I'm hoping to keep it under 20 minutes here. We're going to define the characteristics of what makes a brand, how branding can really impact your business for growth, and then 3 actionable steps that we will do together that will help you build and identify your brand from here on forever. And so that's what I'm really excited to dig into. As Zach mentioned, I'm Robert Clark with some alphabet soup behind my name. That's how you can probably tell I'm a NAFA member. I'm an income protection specialist. So anyone that knows me professionally knows that I'm very passionate about disability insurance. That is my specialty. I partner with other financial advisors and employee benefits specialists. And I share this with you because if you ever look at my personal brand that I'm working on, it's very much centered around those things, right? I contribute quite a bit of content on social media channels and other media channels as well, some of the traditional ones. I'm a speaker. I've presented to roomfuls of 500, and I'm hoping that number continues to grow. And then, these things that we'll get into is your brand isn't just about you professionally, it's about what's important to you. And so I always tell people I'm a closet finance nerd. Like, yeah, I'm very niched into disability insurance, but I love all things finance, whether that's real estate investing, e-commerce, consulting, whatever you think of, like these should be pieces of your brand as well. I was talking about my dog before we got started. So people want to know who you are, not just what you do, but who you are. And those are very important. I'm also the creator of Advice First, and that's just a brand that I started because I loved the meaning of it. And Advice First is really like a marketing play. I use it to give away certain things to other people who I see represent the message. And that is, quit trying to sell people things and just give them advice first. Be a person of value, and then people will see you as valuable. So the big idea here, sorry, I got to keep moving my video screens out of the way. The big idea here, you already have a brand. Okay. Today is not the day that you say, oh, I cannot wait to start my brand. You already have one. And it's what people think of you when they hear your name or when they see you in public, right? You want to be the one identifying what sets you apart. You can change how people think about you when they hear your name or see you in public. So your brand is generally, where's your expertise? Where are your values? What is valuable to you? And how do you carry yourself either in person or online? All of these things matter, and this is what will determine your brand. But again, you all already have a brand. So it's your job to craft that message as to how other people are hearing it and paying attention to you. So what I went ahead and did and is gather a handful of people in the finance community that have done a phenomenal job of branding. And I know I could have taken us down the path of, Steve Jobs and Apple and what they've done as branding, or, some of our media influencers. I think of like Grant Cardone or Robert Kiyosaki, and all of these brands, but it's not easy to relate to them because you think they've reached a pinnacle of success, and that's why so many people know them. So if we were to come down a layer, if we were to really think about who are the professionals in our community who have done a phenomenal job of branding themselves, the very first person I think of is Jose Hernandez. And if you don't know Jose, he brands himself as the Millennial Money Mentor. What's really unique about his story is, yes, he was with Merrill Lynch, now he's independent, now he does financial education for all entrepreneurs and young professionals. He's the founder of something called Finance University. But again, it's not just your personal representation or your professional representation. It's about what is important to you. And so some of the things that Jose always talks about is being an immigrant to the US. His parents were immigrants. He was not born in the United States, but coming here and trying to get out of where his family kind of entrenched themselves here in the US has everything to do with finance. And so he's led a lot of people that can relate to that story to financial freedom. A lot of what he also talks about is being a collegiate baseball player. And so baseball is his love and his life. And so he also connects to people on that. And it's just interesting to see how all of these things come together. And we'll go into examples of, how do you really start sharing the message of what you represent? There are plenty of female well-branded professionals in our world. Lana Hawkins, she has branded herself as the Black Hawk, and she's a finance expert, media consultant, marketing consultant and media professional. And what she really tries to talk about is, the importance of being a financially independent woman and female. And what does that mean? What does that represent? And is a part of, not just the finance or the professional know-how. She lives in New York and preaches about, Northeast living and the food and the culture. And then she's written a book. I know this is the title of her book, but also there's a lot of media that she creates with the same heading, which is Young, Fun, and Financially Free. And so these are just ways that professionals like you, like me, are out there branding themselves in a way that, one, people know what they do professionally, and two, people know who they are personally. Okay, our last one is Ryan Odom. Ryan is known as the bullish millennial. So he is also a millennial finance expert. He is big on personal freedom, mental health, but how do your finances, how can they impact your mental health and your personal freedom from within, right? But he also talks about his dogs and his pets that he loves. He's a big fan of promoting coffee without electronics. So if you go into a Starbucks, everyone's always staring at their phone or laptop, and he is a huge fan of just try and drink an entire cup of coffee without looking at a single electronic screen. And these are what people become known for, right? They talk about their message. It doesn't have to be on social media. You can talk to it with a partner or a neighbor or a friend or someone that you work with. This is how you start developing your brand. And we'll get into how do you how do you identify and characterize some of these things that define your brand yourself? So before we get into that, I want to speak about the importance of branding. It's not just about creating followers. It's not just about creating influence. Building your brand has huge economic gains built into it. 33% of buyers trust messages from a company, while 90% of buyers trust recommendations from someone they know. That is huge. That means if you have the brand to be an expert in a given professional area, people will much rather prefer your opinion than a company's opinion. And so you have to think about that as you create your brand. That is what's getting your name out there as the person to call, because they're going to trust you before they trust a company. 53% of vendors have lost orders based on information that's either found or not found about them online. So that's the importance of having a presence, and then also kind of monitoring that presence, right? Like I said, we all already have a brand. It's up to us to craft and cater and change that message to what we want to be known for. And then lastly, 77% of all discussions on social media are folks seeking advice, information, or help. So it's much easier to answer and interact with individuals as opposed to a company, right? This is all going back to people like working with people. And I have a few strategies here at the end. You don't need to be the one to create some mass influence or mass audience that you're preaching to. That is not building a brand. That's building an audience. Building a brand is, even if you talk and work with one person, how do they see you when they're interacting with you on a various topic? And so some of the benefits, again, we went through those stats, really interesting, but how does this really impact you? If you're an advisor, or if you're a wholesaler, or if you do anything in finance, think about it. We put so much effort on trying to get inbound business, right? And the outbound marketing and sales channels are constantly over promoted. Cold call, send cold emails, try to get interviews and fact form calls and get fact finder questions filled out. Branding is all about creating an inbound flow of leads, customers, people who want your help, right? That's going to lead to more referrals. That's going to lead to more testimonials. And that's going to create all the social proof that you need to drive business through your brand, right? Master your brand, maximize your growth. This is where branding has its implications on your business and professional success. So again, I am just another person developing my own brand. When I look for branding advice, I go to someone who's an expert in it. The person I lean on, I highly encourage all of you to follow and listen to his podcast and a lot of the content he creates. It's Ryan James Miller, and he's a branding expert. He's a coach and consultant. He has a podcast called the Excellent Mindset Podcast, the phrase that you're looking at there. And he's the creator of something really interesting called the Foundations Group. And I went through the Foundations Group, and that's a lot of what I'm going to share with you today. Admittedly, it's all from Ryan Miller's work, and I called him a couple weeks ago and I asked him for permission. I said, "Hey, I'm giving this class on branding. You taught me everything I know about branding. Can I just replicate and talk about exactly how you help people? That way they can walk away with some value." He was all about it. And what we're going to dig into is really your roles, your values, and your goals. Those are the three critical pieces that we're going to help you define who you are as a brand and how you might adjust this message based on what's currently out there. So one, I want you to be thinking about these things as I run through them. You want to identify your roles. What is a role? A role is, I'm a son, I'm a fiance, I'm a dog dad, I'm a fitness enthusiast, I'm a student, I'm an income protection specialist. What are all these things that you do on a day-to-day basis, right? What are you known for? And you want to think about these roles and make sure you note how they fulfill you. The reason this is an exercise is because you will be aligning with people who have similar roles, and same with values and same with goals, right? But not just people to partner or collaborate with. A lot of the people that will call you for help will call you because they align with the roles that you identify, right? Maybe you're a father and they're a father as well. Maybe you're a single mother and they're a single mother as well. This is what creates brand and business growth through communicating these messages. You might think, I don't need to tell anybody that, I'm a father or a mother of 3 kids. It's actually very impactful when consumers can understand that you're just like them and you just happen to be an expert in XYZ area. So once you identify these roles, I want you to think about what, if any of these roles, do you need to change? Would you like to change? Or what other roles would you like to add, right? Maybe you're not a fitness or enthusiast or an athlete, but you want to be an athlete. Or maybe you're not a book author, but you want to be a book author. So you have to think about, based on who's your brand today, based on your roles, and then what roles do you want to add or change that fulfill who you ideally want to become or want to be known for. Number 2 is talking about your values, right? What is important to you? I know everyone, especially if you're an AFA member, you have values that go far beyond what you do professionally, right? We usually give much more than we receive. We usually care about people at the end of the day over profit. And so defining what is important to you, again, your target audience is going to love and resonate with you because of those values that you create and that you talk about. And then not just defining what is a value to you, but why, right? A big one for me is I'm a huge fan of financial freedom, creating income producing assets. It's not about money though. Why is financial freedom important to me? It's because one day, 5 or 10 years from now, I'm going to have 2 or 3 kids, and I want to be able to spend as much time as I humanly can with them and not worrying about trying to make a paycheck. And so that is why financial freedom is important to me. It's not about money. It's about, why are these values important to you? And then this next one really helps with some homework that I'm going to give you to do if this is something you decide to pursue. Who else aligns with those same values, right? You want to find people that also value their health, or also value their family, or also value financial freedom so that they can spend time with people that they love. These are people that will either be your customer, or B, can be people that you partner with and collaborate and share each other's valuable experience. And maybe you refer them to someone that you've worked with, and then likewise, they refer you to someone that they've worked with. But you will resonate far beyond anything based on your values, which stem from inside your heart, inside your head. It's from the inside out rather than outside in. And then the last piece is, what daily functions represent those values? So if those are really important to you, what are you doing on a day-to-day that reflects a lot of those things that you've identified as values? These are things that you're going to be ready to talk about, share, write about. And again, you don't have to record yourself on video. You don't even have to put an article on social media or whatever. It's just things that you want to talk to other people that you're already engaging with, how you want to be seen. If you want these values to be a part of your brand, then you need to be ready to talk about them and align with people and resonate with people based on those values. And then lastly, you have roles, values, and lastly, you've defined success. What do you want to accomplish, and who do you want to become? Now, these feel so far out there, right? They're kind of wishy-washy. They're, oh, great, here we go. I've set goals before. I don't really remember them, or I don't follow them, whatever. The most important piece, I would say, is the last one. Who do you want to become? Far too often when we set up goals, and again, I'm stealing this from Ryan Miller. Far too often when we set up goals, we're trying to set, a materialistic target. Right? I want to have $10 million. I want to have 1,000 clients. I want to, have XYZ or XY car. These goals do not move us from the inside out. They are very much outside in. And so we need to reflect on, who do we want to become, right? Do you want to be an author? Do you want to be a media host? Do you want to be known for giving the best financial advice in your area or nationally, right? How do you define this as success? What do you want to accomplish along the way? But most importantly, who is the person that you ideally want to become as you're building this brand? That will be your continual North Star. Okay. Now, these are some last and final tips from me personally. As I've gone through this, I've identified my roles, my values, my goals. Partly is, I want to be able to give back to people, and not just, telling them about disability insurance. I want to be able to give back to people in ways that I know how, because I've gone through this and I'm still going through this. So how do you take this brand and this message to an audience, right? Number one, you identify those influencers who align with all of those three things: your roles, your values, your goals. You should have a list of 10 people, 5 to 10 people, and those should be the people that you focus on as, hey, they resonate with who I am inside, and the audience that they've created likely will resonate with those same values, goals, and roles as well. A big thing, a lot of people look at an influencer today, and you can find them on, social media, in your neighborhood, right? You look at billboards, you can see who's creating an audience. And I'm such a big fan of using what they've done, but not necessarily what they've said, right? So we don't need to replicate them in the way that we need to have the same message, and we need to have the same billboard, and we need to, be talking about the same things. I just want you paying attention to what they're doing. What are they doing to promote their own brand? Are they posting on, social media platforms? Which one? What are they saying? Are they only talking about professional things, or are they talking about personal things? These are things that you want to replicate. Is how do they communicate about their brand, which again is going to be very similar to yours based on similar roles, values, and goals. And you want to replicate and start looking at, okay, what do they do that I can do as well, or that I want to do as well? Another huge one is, if you're wanting to build a brand, you do not have to go all out and, write your own book. You don't have to create your own podcast. You don't have to create your own TV show or any form of media that you want to try and get your message out through. You really just have to be a guest. That's where it all can start. I've been a guest on hundreds of podcasts. I have my own podcast, and I've only recorded 3 episodes because there's just so much weight on trying to create a podcast. But when someone asks me to be on their podcast, or I've reached out to people and say, hey, I have some valuable insight I want to share on this topic, that is so much easier, because you're starting to figure out, what are you saying? What you're saying is a reflection of what's important to you. And that's why you have to go through the roles, values, and goals exercise to really think these things through, because that's how you're going to talk about them. And being a guest on some other professionals or personal friends media channel is a great way to identify your audience without having to go through all the overhead of creating your own thing if you're not feeling that's comfortable right now. You can utilize social media. It's not mandatory. It is a great way to build an audience and to have your brand recognized. It's also very easy for people to refer you if you are on social media, right? All the time I get tagged in various things, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. But if someone talks about real estate, if someone talks about commerce, I'm often brought into the conversation. And that is what you want to happen as you're building your brand. You want people to know you for being an expert in certain areas, and social media makes it very easy for you to get brought into these conversations. And then last, this, other than defining your roles, values, and goals, this might be most important. If you are someone who is ready and willing and able to get your message out to a mass audience, right? If you really want to take your brand, you're thinking, I have a brand, I have a message, I want to get this out there. I cannot stress enough the importance of building a team instead of trying to do it all yourself. And what I mean by this is, again, I speak from this from experience because I'm still overwhelmed on a regular basis trying to get all these different media channels satisfied. And so when I record a video with somebody, you have to edit that video. You have to, timestamp that video. You have to design it. You have to subtitle it. There are so many other pieces to actually creating a finished media product. And you do not want to be held down by trying to do all of these different pieces yourself. Again, my podcast is the perfect example. I jokingly talk about it, but I'm serious. I've only recorded 3 episodes. Frankly, that's enough to even start it. I have not put it anywhere because 1, I need to go through and edit it. 2, I need to host it on a certain site. 3, I need to do all these other pieces. Instead, we need to be looking at who can we utilize that can help us with some of these other actionable pieces and find people that are experts in those fields. And how you're going to find them is likely through social media or through those other influencers that you've identified as people you want to relate to. Ask them. That's a great conversation starter too. If you're wanting to build a closer relationship with these folks, is, hey, who do you have edit your podcast? Hey, where do you host your podcast? Hey, I saw you wrote an article, did you write that yourself? Do you have a ghostwriter? Who edited it? How do you publish it? Any of these questions, you want to be finding the experts that you can lean on and slowly building your team. So think about what channels are most important to you and find a team that can help support that vision to get your message out. So those were my tips. Here's some books, courses I recommend as we kind of wrap up. One of my favorite books is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Another great book is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And it's a little bit more business focused, but it's just as important. And it really digs in through the roles, values, and goals exercise. I mentioned Ryan Miller. That's where I got all of this trailing content from for the roles, values, and goals. Ryan Miller does something really interesting every Friday. Like I said, you should look him up and follow him. I know he's on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, and Facebook, so pretty much all of them. But he does a really neat thing every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So he hosts what he calls authentic conversations. It's basically a keynote speech. He'll take in some audience questions and feedback, and he will talk through the importance of branding, or how do you sell and relate to people, especially at a time like this, right? And he gives so much value on these Friday sessions, on the authentic conversations. And it's all free. All you do is just log in, you get the Zoom invite. So I highly encourage you to check that out. And then also the foundations group. That's something that I went through. You by no means have to go through it, but Ryan Miller leads you through a 6-week exercise that really helps you harness and dive into a lot of what we've talked about, because, I wish it was something I could teach in 20 minutes. But it takes days and hours and a lot of self-reflection and some good prompts to really dig into and identify, these important pieces as we build our brands. So I hope that was helpful. That's all I have for you today. But again, the importance of branding and using it to maximize your business growth, it's all there. You just need to find the people doing it. So thank you, Zach.
Thanks so much, Robert. I really appreciate your expertise and your time with us today. Are there any questions for Robert today? I didn't see any in the chat, but if you'd like to take a minute here, we can sit and discuss. Otherwise, if you think of a question later today or later this week and you want to pass it along, you can always email me at recruitment@nafa.org. And so here's one. Do you have any specific tips for someone that would want to build their personal brand? Do you think it's different if it's for captive agents versus independent agents? Do you think that there's a fundamental difference there?
I do not at all. And the perfect example would be Ryan Odom, the third individual I mentioned. I was referencing their brand. They're actually a captive agent. with Mass Mutual. And again, your professional arm of your brand is one piece of probably 8 to 10 different pieces. So it doesn't really, it's more important on what you represent versus who you represent. And so think about all of the aspects of your brand outside of just your professional branding.
Great. Well, if anyone thinks of any other questions, like I said, you can reach out to me at recruitment@nafa.org. I'd be happy to pass them along to Robert. As soon as I'm going through it, actually, we do have another one for you from Sean. What are the requirements to identify as an expert? You know, I know that some people are skeptical of that label in the industry, and you know, I've heard instances where people like to avoid it altogether just because that term. And I know some people say thought leader as a difference. What do you think?
Yeah. So it's one of those things that I think, as identifying as an expert, the way you can really identify, and some are kind of misconstrued of that, they don't want the label of being an expert. I found so much value in talking about different stories and circumstances that I've personally navigated or have worked with others to help them through as well. That is, you know, people aren't going to make sure you have a PhD or a master's in any given topic. They value, again, personal relationships and people that have the experience. That's why they're not leaning on companies, because, you know, the companies are trying to say that they're the smartest ones in the room, but you know, it's very biased opinions. People like people, and they're not even looking for an expert. They're looking for people with experience in a given topic. And so I think that's the best way that you can build your identity as an expert in a certain area, is just talk about cases, stories, or ways that you've been personally impacted by some of those things.
Mm-hmm. Right. Someone else in the chat mentioned, could specialist be even a more acceptable term? You know, kind of like you said, it's less about the verbiage, more about the just putting forward that you have the expertise in the, not expertise, sorry, that you've had the experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I consider myself an income protection specialist, right? I don't really care whether they say expert or leader or thought leader. That doesn't really matter. To me, what matters more is that people know I can create an impact, or I have experience in a certain area.
Sure. Makes sense. I'll hold for just a couple more seconds here.
Yeah. I mean, great questions, John, Sean, and Jing. I really appreciate those. You're all thinking down the right path, and I, you know, as kind of a final parting thought, don't overthink it. Again, you're not trying to create a brand like you're checking things off a list that define your brand. Your brand is just who you are. And so really think about the roles, the values, and the goals, and that will guide you more than anything. And again, it wipes specialist, expert, whatever label you're thinking about, it wipes that off your brain, because again, everyone is going to have their own interpretation. I'm known as an expert in things that I shouldn't be known as an expert in. And to the contrary to that, people don't know I'm an expert in other areas. And so it's just, you know, it's all comes down to what I've talked about, what I live on a daily and regular basis, based on the things that I've identified are important to me, are something I do on a daily basis, or something that reflects the person that I want to become over the next 5, 10, and 30 years.
I think that's a good way to look at it. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope that everyone has a great rest of the week. I do want to point out and remind you again that this was a recorded session. So if you do need the recording, feel free to reach out to us, and be on the lookout for next week. We'll be joined by NAFA trustee Mark Aker. He'll be talking about leadership in the industry and your community as well. So should be a good session. I believe it's the first time we're going to be doing that session on Advisor Ambassador Program. So it could be an interesting topic. But But thank you again for everyone. Thank you, Robert, for joining us once again. Always appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise, Zach. Stay safe, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Have a good day.